everyone, John Henry here, slingshotfutures.com, and welcome to the daily futures and crypto market outlook for tomorrow's trading. That's going to be the 1st of November. Finally, finishing off October. Happy Halloween to all of you out there if you're going to be celebrating that later today. Bringing the kids out to get some candy and all that fun stuff, right? Now, before we jump on in, as always, make sure to swing it over to slingshotfutures.com, scroll down, and click on the Join the Daily Outlook newsletter. From there, you'll be able to sign up on our free newsletter list so you'll be notified every time one of these videos comes out. Along with that, we'll also go over a bunch of different things inside of the newsletter. So not just the video, but in the email itself, we cover anything of interest. Could be a stock that might be setting up in an interesting location, could be a new crypto coming out, etc. It's a really good newsletter to get your hands on so that you stay in the know in what's going on. Next up is the live trade room subscription and trial info. From here, you can sign up for a free 3-day trial in the live trade room so you can hang out with us for a couple days and see how everything works. It's a great way to sit down with us, see the screen, see how everything is going, and overall just kind of get a feel for what we do every day, how we approach the markets. You can see the screens, the trades, everything that's happening all in one place. It's just a great resource to kind of get your hands a little bit wet, right? Get your feet wet. Now, jumping into the charts, we've got a little bit of, not a whole lot of movement. Now, today was a German holiday. They did have Reformation Day today, and we didn't really have a ton of news, but that said, that didn't stop some of the markets. It did stop the euro, though. The euro really didn't do much at all today. In fact, the analysis really stays the same from yesterday. Nothing really changed. We may have widened out the wedge a little bit, but for the most part, the wedge low still holding really well. The wedge top, they tried closing outside of it, but that completely failed. So overall, everything's kind of the same, and that likely is largely due to the fact that the German markets were closed. Now, in terms of anything new or interesting, we're still holding that earlier level of support from before. And as we all know, support turns into resistance once you start breaking through it, and that's kind of the situation that we're dealing with now with a double top. We're running into that same location, and this is the area that a lot of sellers will be building into positions to try to drive the market lower back down towards that bottom. We still have the support in the way, that rising channel support, and if anything, you could probably even widen it out a little bit now to these new lows. Either way, though, we still have support in the way, and before the sellers can really take control, they're going to need to break through that and then maybe come back and retest it for a sort of confirmation of the downside move. Still bearish on the euro for obvious reasons, but at the same time, we need to wait for a little extra proof, and it probably won't come until we start seeing tomorrow's trading session when Germany is back open and ready to rock and roll. Over on gold, gold has broken down of the ascending wedge back towards the direction of the downside bears. The sellers are taking back over once again. Major selling resistance at 1280 held beautifully, driving further down and cracking through support at 73.7. They tried holding that level, right? They tried holding it. That was a multiple level of confluence. We had horizontal support and the earlier wedge coming in as support as well. So a couple things stacking up. They held it for about an hour, hour and a half, and then we broke down back to a new low. I don't think we're out of the woods yet to the downside. A lot of selling pressure is still likely going to try to continue on any correction up that we get. The sellers definitely own the market, but they are attempting to trap the lows. And notice this previous swing low and how weak the bears have been around there. They've been having a really hard time getting through there. That's the same thing that happened here, but it only took, 2 hours or so before we were off to the races again. In this case, they tried, but now they're failing again, and that's a little bit of a concern. We might be finding a small balancing area here, right around 1269, 1270, and as long as we stay above that, the sellers have their work cut out for them. Once again, another situation where they're going to have to prove themselves. Now, the nice thing for the sellers here is simply the fact that if we can break through them, then we should have a nice opportunity to sell and continue that move down to the lows. Now, I'm not anticipating necessarily the lows to test. They might, and we do still have that support underneath us, but I'm really looking for around 1266 as that downside objective, mainly just due to the fact that the last several times they've tried to dip below that, it's completely failed. So looking to go ahead of that by a little bit, 66.1, 66.2, just so that you don't really have to worry about all that chop and slop. Nobody wants to deal with that. Over on crude oil continuing to the upside, beautiful bullish continuation, still looking for the objectives above. The major objective at the highs is at 55.12, and looking for, a little more juice, right? We're looking for a little more juice to the upside to finish that objective off back into the 55s. Might not happen today. Tomorrow is inventory day, and that could definitely have an impact, on the overall rally to the upside. if the news comes out with some halfway decent numbers, we could easily see that lift to the upside. And at the moment, you know, looking at the crude oil inventories, they're only forecasting a negative 1.7 million for tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see. The API might give us a slightly different view on that, but that might be an easy way for them to kind of push back up and finish that objective off. Either way, though, still looking beautiful to the upside. Everything is looking good. For the buyer's case, we're pretty expensive right now. Buyers going to have a hard time buying way up here. Chances are a lot of buyers would rather be buying some form of you know, the rising megaphone low, I guess. It would be the best way to put it. Could also be a channel, I guess. But that right now, we're at a premium, and not a lot of buyers are going to want to buy up here. It's mostly just sellers getting out of the way, allowing the price to rally higher so that there's more room for the market to go because they think that they can get more out of it, and I don't blame them. The overall movement to the upside, again, it still looks really good, but I think buyers would rather see a pullback before they start jumping in. Nice little congestion area inside there at around 54.21, seeing a lot of back and forth, and that would be a beautiful area to catch a nice pullback before that rally up. And then finally, the S&P, still in a little bit of a wedge, not really a whole lot going on. The index markets were relatively slow today. The NASDAQ had a nice lift, but for the most part, not getting a whole lot of action. Lots of back and forth, and just kind of a balance. We're sitting on top of the wedge highs right now. Wedge lows we're still plenty far away from, and we are still holding that 38.2% pullback right on top of that major level of support. So the buyers are still holding it, and this is their last level that they're really going to have to deal with. Well, I say last, there is one more, but if we can break through this falling resistance, then we have a very good shot at a pullback lift back to the upside. One last thing that stands out, though, is this previous double top, just due to the fact that not only did they respect it here, but they also respected it here. And that shows us that even more recently, within the last day or so, they're still paying attention to that level. And that might be the next line in the sand. Now, we could easily see something like this, where it pulls up, bounces off of it, pulls down, hits a nice bounce, and then we can break through it from there. But either way, we have a couple different ways to approach this market right now, and at the moment, we're sitting on top of selling resistance. Overall, bulls still own the market and looking for that continuation of the upside. It just depends on how strong they want to show up to the party. Now, in terms of tomorrow's news, we already touched base on the crude oil inventories at 10:30, but tomorrow morning out of the UK at 5:30, we have the manufacturing PMI for October, forecasted at 55.8. At 8:15 for the U.S. session, we have the ADP non-farm employment change forecasted at 200,000. At 10 o'clock, ISM manufacturing PMI for October, forecasted at 59.5. Of course, we already talked about it. Crude oil inventories at 10:30. That's forecasted at negative 1.756 million. And then tomorrow, 1400, 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, we have the FOMC statements and the federal interest rate decision. They're forecasting a 1.25%, which is the same as the previous. And then out of Canada, we have at 16:15 Eastern time, the Bank of Canada Governor Paulos is speaking. So lots of news for tomorrow, and halfway decent news, right? Not small announcements. We have some big news announcements that we've got around the corner for tomorrow, and well, we have to be prepared for some potential crazy movement, especially going into that 1400 period in time. Now, jumping over to the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin pushing back into the highs again, topping 6,400. I believe they found a high. Let's see here. Let's get the exact high. The exact high, 64.22 and 68 cents. So a beautiful rally to the upside. Just phenomenal continuation. We had a little bit of a range. They trapped the lows, and now we're off to the races once again. The overall movement that we're really showing still have a good sign of continuation of that major upside objective, which is going to be just a little further, not too much, around the 64.70s. We do have a new little bit, I guess would be the best way to put it, possible channel low, maybe a wedge low, something like that. We can't really take this line and copy it and put it on the highs because it just doesn't fit that well yet, but we are getting a little bit of confirmation. So with the fact that they are testing those highs, pulling off a little bit, we're gaining confirmation of this top. And if we can start pulling back just a little bit more, we have a very good reason to believe that this would be a new channel high. Now, the reason I say that is, well, mainly just due to the fact that I like seeing a lot of proof. When I put a new trend line or something like that, and if I'm looking for a channel, I want to see, you know, a good reaction, but not just the reaction, what they do afterward, right? Do they pull back for a little while? A single candle test might look good right now, but it could easily just continue up and it would basically look like it didn't even exist. So I want to see a little bit of extra proof off of these highs, but it does appear as though we are testing and bouncing off of channel resistance. Buyers would still likely love to be buying on any type of pullback, and right now a pullback to the range, very frequently you see that where you have a breakout of one side of the range, it breaks out of the other, pulls back, and you get a nice bouncing attempt off of that range retest, and that's going to be at around 6,200. So that is the pullback that we are looking for on Bitcoin, a little bit further down, so we can buy right back in towards highs. Over on Ethereum, from one wedge to another, we're really not breaking out of anything, and when they do, they just go into another wedge. We're just not gaining a whole lot of ground. Now, one thing that I really like the look of right now is simply the fact that we have a potential fake break of the lows of the wedge. This is the same thing that happened over here. Now, you might not be able to see it, but originally that wedge was drawn like this. They fake break the lows, chopped around a little while, and led into a beautiful breakout to the upside. And this looks like a copy-paste pattern, just a little bit smaller. So this could easily go sideways for a little while and then lead into another breakout up. The next major objective on Ethereum is going to be sitting at around 312 to 313, with big objectives up to 320 for continuation higher. We might be stuck in a range for the better part of tomorrow, based on what we've seen previously. But if we can start breaking out to the upside, we could easily get some legs and get a nice run for continuation higher. And then over on Litecoin, we're still floating around in the middle of nowhere. A little bit of a level of support beginning to form at 56.04. We are showing buyers really defending this bottom right now, and they're trying everything they can to hold it above there. It's a little bit of a tough spot because we're just smack in the middle of the wedge. There's nothing else really there. We have some previous swings, I suppose, but it's not really a big area of confluence that I want to see. I want to see, the bottom of a trend line lining up with horizontal support, cough, cough, and the 61.8% coming into play right there, right? I want to see something like that. If that were to happen, that would mean that we would have to basically go range-bound for another day and a half before we actually get the rally up, which, I mean, if that's the case, then so be it, but I'd really rather not see Litecoin in the same range for the next day and a half. We'll have to wait and see what they want to do, but for right now, we're just kind of in the middle of Nowheresville, and buyers are trying to hold it, but chances are it's not going to do so well, just due to the fact that we're in the middle of nowhere. I would rather see a dip down to major support at the bottom of the channel and the 786 right around that same place. I think we can get a better price on Litecoin. Over on NEO, not really a whole lot going on. We did have a nice spike to the upside all the way up to around 33, and then quickly snapped on back towards the same area that we've been stuck in for the last week, floating around $29. Seems to be we're kind of ping-ponging between 28 and 30, 28 and 30, and just bouncing around. And then every once in a while, you'll see that deviation down to like 26, and then a lift up to like 31 to 33, and then we go into a range again. We're just not getting that continuation. We're still waiting for the buyers to really show up and prove it, and stick the landing. And I say that because they had a perfect launch pad, but they really didn't do so well after that. Everybody sold out of their positions, and that caused the market to drop right back down. So we're pretty much just smack in the middle of the same place that we have been. Over on the Civic market, we are kind of ranging here as well. We're at the highs, so a lot of traders will be looking to exit their positions that they were buying in down here and here. And the same thing goes. We're looking to trade this the exact same way, buy low, sell high. And right now, low is around 30 cents, down to 27 cents. High is around 34 to 36. And then we have good old ADA, one of my favorites. We have a copy-paste situation once again. We have this exact same pattern that formed back here. They tried breaking out of the lows, it failed, and led into a huge rip to the upside all the way up to 490s before pulling back again. We widen the wedge out, and we have the exact same thing forming again, and once again, a big rip to the upside. Now, not as big as the previous one, but it's just getting started. We may be able to see the beginning of a relatively larger move up to around 500s to 520s before we start finding a little bit of a problem with continuation. Either way, though, this is pretty much a copy-paste pattern on ADA, and looking for it to want to continue. And then finally, adding Bitcoin Gold to the list. Now, Bitcoin Gold, I'm still not a huge fan of. Between Bitcoin Gold and Bitcoin Cash, I prefer gold. But that said, Bitcoin Gold was just a really sloppy launch, and I really don't have a whole lot of faith in it. But it is moving, and because of that, well, we're traders. We're not here to trade fundamentals. We're here to trade technicals, or at least I am, and I'm looking for some technical patterns here. Now, in terms of Bitcoin Gold, we have a major level of support building at the bottom at around $90. We have a major level of resistance floating above us at around 170. This seems to be the range that we're kind of dealing with at the moment, and notably, we do have some previous larger swing highs as well, floating right around where price is. That's all fine and dandy, and we can mark those up. But a couple things that we do want to also keep an eye on is simply the fact that it kind of looks like this initial movement is much like any other initial coin offering. It goes really crazy to start, and then we start to find a little bit of a balance. And that little bit of a balance is a pretty good looking bull trend to the upside. We have a lot of decent price action looking good. So because of that, I'm going to be looking at this as more of a nice trend continuing higher, and it could even end up as a possible little bit of a channel, something like this. Got a little bit more continuation to go to the upside before we start hitting those channel highs at around 135, but everything is still looking pretty good. One area of interest that I am going to be keeping an eye on is this previous swing high just ahead of 140. That's going to be a big area for a little bit of a stall, maybe a little bit of a pullback. But we do have Bitcoin Gold on the list, and we do have some potential movement to keep our eyes on as we continue forward. Right now, though, in the shorter term, nice bull trend grinding its way higher, so we're looking to buy pullbacks. So that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you learned something will be fun and interesting. Like we always say, it doesn't matter what market you're approaching. Always, always, always make a trade plan. Trade that plan, follow those rules, and you'll be A-okay. Until next time, we'll see y'all then.